Hey guys, it's Nikki here. I'm here today just to give you my review for the movie Pitch Perfect. I somewhat recently read the nonfiction book this movie was based on, and I'll include a link below and in the card possibly for that video. And I was very surprised to find out that this movie had a book, but you could definitely see the flavor of the book coming through in this complete fictionalization, dramatization of collegiate a cappella. I love this movie. That's part of why I wanted to do it. And there's really it's just the kind of movie that is my go-to movie when I'm feeling down. And it's just that kind of feel-good, sing out loud along with the characters kind of vibes, and I do that regularly. Ask my husband, he fucking hates it because I am not a singer by trade or talent or skill. And with that out of the way, I'm gonna move on to my likes. So one of my big likes for this one is the development of the group dynamics. I'm a big fan of girl gangs and just groups of women who grow to understand each other and respect each other, even if they don't always necessarily like each other. And I think that is something that happened here. That's just something that I really appreciate, is just kind of that gaining of understanding between women, because we don't always get it from other places in our lives, and it's always fun to see that friendship and kind of lifting up of each other. My second like for this is the pacing. It was really awesome. It does the stereotypical, you have your inciting moment, your climax, your low, and then your resolution. And I have to admit, one of my favorite things about this book is that your low and your dive to the low is very quick, and your recovery is very feel good. Just the general redemption post low of the group and their dynamics and them being the underdogs just is unreal, and it fills me with a sense of joy every time when you get to that last performance, and I personally sing along with them every time, and I try to sing every part because that's just what you do. Third is related less to the movie and more to the book to movie adaptation, which is a term I'm using very loosely here because it was inspired by but is not a fictional book. And that is because having read it and read the book and then watched the movie, I see all of the different flavors of the book coming through in different ways, in you have an all women's group and historically women's groups have not always done well in competitions. They had the Hullabahoos in the movie, which was a lot of fun. They had them doing a performance during the final performance of the championship. And then with the Troublemakers, you had little tastes of both the Hullabahoos and the Beelzebubs that kind of fell into this little melting pot of the Troublemakers in the movie. I really enjoyed the way those flavors of the groups came through, but also some of the history. When you talk to the groups, they tell you what the groups have done historically, what they've done before, and explaining a cappella very early on for people who aren't familiar with it. And while, like I said, I'm using the term book to movie adaptation very loosely, I absolutely loved how the flavors of this nonfiction book so clearly influenced the movie. That being said, I'm gonna move into my first and only negative for this movie, and that is that I wish there was a little bit more from the nonfiction book, because in the book they also talk about producing a cappella recordings, and especially with a group like the Troublemakers, I think that would have been really interesting to see that as part of the background story. And there's just a few other little things here and there that I think would have added a little bit of flavor and dynamic to the groups. I get that this is just a feel-good, fluffy movie, that's why I watch it, but just given how much they took, I think they could have taken a little bit more from the nonfiction book without impeding the storytelling that they were going for. And like I said, that was my only negative. So I'm gonna jump right into the characters, which is, I love that I think all the actors and actresses can sing, or sing well enough that they didn't really need to use auto-tune. I don't know for sure, but I know that the majority of the main characters anyways could sing. Within that, I love the way that the actors and actresses portrayed these characters, because it was a really fun mix of different types of musicians and musical nerds. And the actors and actresses just really brought them to life, and I loved the personality that all of these characters had. They really leaned into their tropes hard, but these tropes played off of each other so well that it was hard to get butthurt about the fact that there were so many tropes present, or at least for me it was. For something like this, where it is a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance, but mostly just a girl gang, the humor and this kind of mix of girls just really did an awesome job bringing the story to life and keeping it high energy and engaging. And with that, I'm going to stop here. I'm not actually going to do a book to movie adaptation score here, because it's just the way that the nonfiction book was done. You couldn't have turned that into a movie, but they made a movie out of that book by just being inspired by it strongly enough to reference it. So the score there would be really low, and I think that's really unfair of me to do because of how this movie was done based on how the book was written. So I'm just gonna do a movie review, and for me this was a 5 out of 5. I very, very much recognize that this movie is not for everyone. There is a very specific group of people, and while it is not necessarily a small group of people, it's a specific group of people who would like this. You have a spunky, eclectic cast that is portraying a spunky, eclectic cast of characters. And it shows them going on this hectic, grueling commitment to singing, and how that impacts their life, how it impacts their relationships with their other people in the group. It was an awesome story. It is your typical feel-good story progression, but done with really immaculate pacing, in my opinion. And it kept you engaged and rooting for the characters through the whole story. And as I mentioned, while this was clearly inspired by the book, the story takes on a life of its own, the way they present it on screen. And it's just that kind of light, fluffy, girl gang style movie and story that I love so much. And that's all I got for you. I talked way too long with very few points. I rambled because I loved it. And if you like that kind of story, I totally recommend watching this movie if you haven't. Because I mean, until about 2 years ago, I had never watched it, and this movie came out in like the mid-2000s, so there you go. And I will leave you guys here, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.